Well, Chris, we're live.
Oh, good. Okay. I feel like I have my what do you call it up here? Um No, Jordan, I've never done that. I've never been on time for anything apparently. Um oh, you got a new little background.
Yeah, I set up an office down here. This was once my gym, but funny thing about the gym is I never used it, so
Heard
just
that,
turned it into
brother.
a second office.
I feel like I should put my camera here. We're gonna tinker. Oh boy.
Tinker before we start recording.
Yes.
Let the people dive in here.
Yeah. Is that better? I mean,
I don't know. Depends on what you're going for here.
what does Jordan think? He's the only one here. I mean, it just looks like I'm staring at the actual camera and not like at the computer, which is what I was doing earlier. Like that take a lot. You look good. How was the weekend?
Weekend was good, man. I went to go see the Black Keys on Saturday. That was cool.
Yeah, so I've seen enough. Thank you, Jordan. All right, we'll go with that. So I posted something earlier about Michelle Branch and Vanessa Carlton.
Okay.
Is somebody in the Black Keys married to one of them?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Was that supposed to be like the next part of the story or something?
No, that's the whole story. That's the whole story.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I made a post about it, and somebody was like, I was at the Black Keys last night, and I wanted to yell out, "We love you, Michelle," and that was it. Yeah. I'm glad I brought it up.
Interesting.
No.
Okay. Well, hey.
Hey.
Yeah, Friday. Got to hang out with some friends.
That's cool.
The little my first fantasy football draft last night.
Oh, I'm not in a fantasy football league.
Okay. Well,
I mean, I would like to be, but I also don't really care. How did you draft?
How did I draft?
I mean, either way. Who'd you draft?
So my team's either going to be horrible or great.
That's how it goes.
Track record would say bad, but my two running backs are McCaffrey and Saquon, who always are hurt.
I feel like that was a really good draft in like 2017.
We'll see how it pays off for me. But it's like a little keeper league, so I have Justin Jefferson in there. Got Justin Herbert as my QB. I'd say it's pretty stacked.
That's fun.
All right, dude. We're at 10 people. Should we get going?
Let's do it.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the College Football Uncensored podcast brought to you by Saturday Down South. I'm your host, Tyler Huck, and with me, as always, Chris Marler. Chris, no one sadder than Nebraska fans.
Man, what a roller coaster of emotion that had to be. I can't wait to talk about this. Week 0 was fun. There was like some good football on.
For being a week 0 and the type of games that we're on, I mean, I found myself excited to watch UConn and Utah State.
Okay, so, and I'm going to give us a mulligan on the Nebraska game.
Well, it was just obviously hindsight's 2020, but it was very foolish of us to just expect Scott Frost would do anything that would be remotely good.
Hindsight is 28-17, not 2020. And when it's 28-17, you apparently onside kick if you're Nebraska.
Right. Which is
yeah, so here's why that we're getting a mulligan for this.
And it's such a desperate move. Like,
I don't know.
What are you doing there? Just have faith that your defense will.
It's inexplicable. There's so many things that happened in that game we're going to talk about for sure. But I tried to get a bet in, and I couldn't get the bet in for whatever reason. Kind of an up and down week, and that was that's how Saturday started. So I went up to the lake just to kind of get away from some stuff. Had a death in the fam, and just kind of like all over the place. So I went up to the lake, just kind of get away, just kind of, reset a little bit before the season started. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put on the game. There's no HD television at the lake. Did not. Yeah.
HD it seems like a nice place that you stayed at.
I didn't like that. I was also told you don't need to watch this game in HD, which honestly wasn't wrong because it's a Big Ten game.
Right.
But then, so
Those
like,
have never been in HD.
No, absolutely not. The game started out pretty awesome because Nebraska comes out. I'm all fired up. Now, I will say I was a little bit let down. I gave that whole pump-up speech about how I was like, hey, we're going to turn on game day and we're going to hear like the Big and Rich theme song, all that shit. None of that happened.
Right.
I was pretty upset about that. And so then watching the game, and it was a great start for Nebraska. Next thing I know, around halftime, I'm like, man, this is a long halftime. This is like a really long halftime. And the local feed in Atlanta just cut out of the game. Just fucking stopped airing a live college football game to show a preseason, not only a preseason Falcons game, but a preseason Falcons preview show before the game.
Right. When they were playing the Jags.
In the preseason. And they were playing the Jags. So
that happened to me as well.
In mind, and I'm like, all right, I don't know what to do. So we figured out we have whatever it is, I think Fox, the app, or whatever you get. There's an app for fucking everything now. And so we end up I turn the game on, but I have to watch the rest of it on my phone because I can't fucking get it to work on the TV or whatever. So I'm watching on my phone, it's fine. That entire rest of the game was so disappointing in so many ways. And again, the roller coaster for Nebraska fans, you're up right away. You're up in the second half. The fucking internet goes down. So there's free beer everywhere.
Dude, the videos coming from that with the beer snakes.
That was, all time.
Out of control.
Anyway. Yeah. So we'll do a recap, obviously, of week 0. I'm going to say that we're 1-0. I'm 1-0 because I only had 2 picks and I'm not going to count the Nebraska one since I didn't get that bet in. Did I live bet Utah State? I did. But how do you want to start the show? How do you want to do this?
Well, official show picks from last week. I had 5 picks. You had 2. So what we're going to do, since we don't really put a limit on the bets that we can take, you could take 12 if you want to. At the end of the year, we'll just do percentage of bets won.
Why don't we just take one mulligan from week 0, though? Because that's what we're going to do.
Okay, well, I went 1-4, so at least Florida State was the one that I won. Yeah, Nebraska minus 12.
Yeah,
Nebraska Northwestern under 50.5. That didn't work out. No. New Mexico State plus 8.5. That didn't work out. And the big one, Hawaii plus 8.5.
See, that was dumb on your end because the numbers were there, but at the same time, you were like, you know what? I told you, I was like, I'm taking Vandy 6.5. And you were like, I'll take Hawaii plus 8.5. We didn't do a lot to give ourselves a synergy of success is what I like to call it. Great point. Yeah.
You live and you learn. It's week 0. This is where things happen like that.
Yeah, it's true.
In all honesty, it's hard to bet the first week because just no one's seen anything yet. So it's all about preseason projections. And you just really don't know what you're seeing. This week 1, we're going to obviously have a great show this week with our picks for the week. But it's I don't know. I don't know what LSU really is. I think they'll win, but I don't know what they are.
Sensitive subject in the Facebook group, apparently.
Oh, okay. Well, so anyways, 1-4 for the week. We don't need to take mulligans. You're 1-1.
I'm 1-0.
If you're taking away Nebraska, no, you're 1-1.
I'm 1-1. It's fine.
All right. We'll make our picks for week 1 in the next episode.
Yeah.
Where do you want to start?
So I do want to talk about there's already the worst beat of all time. Or if you had picked this, it was the best win of all time. We can talk about that in the Vandy game. Let's start with the just week 0 recap because I think most of it's going to be about what were your biggest takeaways from week 0, and then let's talk about the Vandy game specifically. and
I'm
Nebraska.
not kidding when I say I feel for Nebraska fans. Somehow Nebraska finds just a Nebraska way to lose games. They blew 2 double-digit leads in this game. They had 2 devastating fourth quarter turnovers. That really sealed the deal for them. They had the weird onside kick. They just tons of mistakes on special teams, which has just been like the calling card for Nebraska over the last few years.
Right.
Turns out, throwing up in practice all the time probably isn't like maybe the best thing.
What a weird flex.
That's so weird.
What a weird gag flex. I mean, literally, I didn't understand that at all. I will say, watching the Nebraska thing, they started out the way you thought they would. It was a good game for sure, but it was one of those things too where both sides seemed to do anything they could. Like it was like the worst episode or version of one of those like Buffalo Wild Wings commercials. It's like, dude, I don't want this game to end. How can I fuck up even more? That's what was going on, basically.
And Bob
it was like a
voice
troll
comes
job
in.
of a Buffalo Wild Wings commercial because Pat Fitzgerald, your quarterback is like 21 of 23 in the first half, Ryan Helinski, and is just like not dominating, but he's doing really, really well. And you did everything you could to get away from the pass in the second half. Hey.
Lost me money, Chris.
A lot of good punts.
After the game, he kind of like threw his staff under the bus. I don't know if you saw that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, our staff's going to need to learn that they got to be more creative in this league. It's like, first of all, that's not true. And secondly, I don't know, man. Probably want to look at yourself in the mirror and see that you're 1-9 in your last 10 games at Nebraska.
I would want to look at myself in the mirror if I was Scott Frost. Wildly attractive ginger.
Yeah.
I mean, just like which I don't say often if it's a man.
5-21 in close games. 1-score games, 5-21 in those.
So did he lose 9 1-score games or 9 single-digit losses last year?
Probably that's like the same, right?
No, like single-digit, like it could be like a 9-point loss, whatever.
Sure,
it's gonna make a difference. But
yeah.
I mean, 1-score games seems even worse, like or even more unlucky. But then you kind of saw why. Maybe like if you're up 28-11, there's no need to onside kick. It was like they started celebrating way too early, or like they just kind of. I thought Nebraska was going to come out here and have to prove a point. We talked about how they won 56-7 last year. They ran for like 300-400 yards. Like Casey Thompson looked good early at quarterback. Northwestern is a team that is. You want to talk about a roller coaster with that team? They've either finished last in their division or won the division in I guess alternating over the past 4 years. Last first.
Weird.
With Nebraska, you saw a lot of the players from the portal that seemed to do step up very early, not just the quarterback position, but also the receiver. But my God, they just did everything they could to lose that game late. And it was almost like Northwestern was trying to give it to them. I mean, I don't know. It was a great game to start the year, but it was also like, Jesus Christ, what are we doing?
What else stood out to me? FAMU playing that. So FAMU basically is like, hey, we have 7 scholarship linemen that are available for this game. They voted initially to just not play. Then they changed their minds and traveled up to Chapel Hill and were like keeping with UNC for like a lot of the game.
Well, I don't know about a lot of the game, but I will say.
Wasn't it in the third quarter they were within a score?
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty bad for an FCS. That's like what Florida State would typically have done in the last few years.
Shout out to you, by the way. I will say my biggest takeaway from week 1, besides Vandy, which we'll get to, is the incredible overreaction and prisoner of the moment takes that were happening all day on Twitter, which made me happy that we were seeing it again because it was football season. But also, people were writing off Vandy right away. Was that?
Like what? Like, give me an example.
Like, I mean, okay. And I love this dude to death. Graham Coffey was like, sky is fucking falling with Vanderbilt. Sky is falling with Vanderbilt. Sky is falling with UNC. and UNC, you might actually have you have a lot of issues probably to work with. That's why Chiswick's there. And I mean, there's no way to dress that up with what happened with FAMU necessarily.
Right.
This shit with Vandy was just so funny to watch. Like Big Game Boomer, of course, who's just I know we had him on the pod, super nice guy, just getting more and more close to an unfollow by the day. But like the stuff with Vandy, I get it. It's almost like we were. It's one thing to make fun of Vandy because it's Vandy, right? Which that's acceptable.
Hold on, before you go on, we had him on the podcast, and I still don't know if he's like a troll or not.
Yeah,
part of me thinks he's not.
I'm in some weird Twitter like group or I guess what do you call it, like group message thing? Yeah, I hate it. It's everyone in there he's got a weird following. He's got it's like a church camp barstool following where people are like really into some of this. It's fucking weird, man. It's fucking weird. Also, we might have gotten Mincy fired, which was odd.
We didn't get Mincy fired.
Is he still employed?
No, he's still employed, but we didn't do anything. Things started to go downhill for him while we were recording our podcast. And I kept seeing him like look at his phone, like kind of looking a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. Like, it seems like maybe he's like not into the interview, but then he's back in the interview and he's giving us great answers. Clearly knows a lot. I guarantee like either Barstool Social or Portnoy were reaching out to him because I looked on his Twitter account before we went live to see if he had posted about our podcast. And the last thing I saw was him retweeting the Barstool account and then tagging that dude, the far right guy. That's what got him in trouble. It was deleted within, 5 minutes of it being tweeted.
Yeah.
But
I appreciate all the people that reached out to me. I'm assuming you and us, kind of giving us a heads up on Portnoy's tweet about hiring someone for his position, though, hours after he was on our podcast. Very, very odd. Okay. So let's finish up the week 0 talk and then get into I definitely want to talk about the Auburn AD situation. It's also depth chart day for a lot of schools. And then we'll obviously look a little bit into week 1. We have a winning and boozing segment as well. But so, all right, going back to the Vandy game, I thought this was awesome. I thought first I was so fucking mad that we had to stay up till 10:30 to watch this damn Vanderbilt Hawaii game. It starts off not great. By the time another situation where didn't have this channel at the lake, so we have to. I think we got like Fubo TV or whatever. By the time we joined the broadcast, they're down 7-0 to what's arguably the worst team in all of college football. Hawaii's bad. Hawaii's really bad. But Vandy, after the first 2 drives, you have a 4th and 5 they go for, and the quarterback throws the ball away. But the people that were breaking down Vandy's awful. They were getting beat up front and blah, blah. It's like, we're 4 minutes into the game, guys. I don't know what y'all expected from Vandy, but what are we doing? Mike Wright, I've said this over and over since media days, one of the most charismatic and engaging players in this whole league. At quarterback for Vandy had a great game. It was good to see Clark Lee get a win and like in emphatic fashion. There's at one point they hadn't scored 30 points in a game all year last year, and they had 35 points alone in the third quarter, which was awesome. The highs and lows of that game. The low was I made a meme of a skin flesh colored dildo with a Vanderbilt logo on it that was Clark Lee. I sent it to you for sure. Sent it to you with you and producer Dan. Clark Lee looks like it's just Clark Lee-ness is what we're going to call him from the entire year.
His Clark Lee-ness? Clark
Lee-ness.
Oh.
Yeah. It's a rhyming joke. It didn't go over well on Twitter either. But Vandy looked awesome. It was good to see. I will also say not only they cover the spread, but possibly the worst beat for some people that you will see all year. It wasn't for me. I went big on Vandy in the first quarter. Vandy was -3 in the first quarter. I was trying to find Vandy to score first because I thought that was like a slam dunk. Thank God I didn't find it.
Yeah.
But Vandy down 7-0 with roughly 32 seconds left in the first quarter. And next play scores on a rushing touchdown tied up, kicks off. First play, I jokingly say, like, throw a pick six. And they get a fumble return for a touchdown to go up 14-7. They score 14 points in 9 seconds and cover the first quarter spread.
Look at that.
It was amazing.
For you.
Is our year.
You got to remember that.
It was awesome. I mean, like, and Vandy's got a couple of good players. It's just unfortunate because in the most Vandy way possible, they're also comical. Like, Orgy is their best player, the linebacker. His name's Orgy.
How's it spelled?
Not like orgy, but it's still pronounced that way, which is a bold move.
That's unfortunate.
But I thought Vandy looked good, man. I thought that, it was good to see just like it not just carried by Mike Wright, but they looked good in a lot of ways. They beat a bad Hawaii team. And I thought it was a fun way to end week 0.
Yeah. I was happy Florida State, didn't lose to an FCS school this year, which is great progress. In all seriousness, it's tough to take anything from the game. I was impressed. It was the first time in school history we had 3 running backs go over 100 yards, which I thought was pretty cool. Saw some things in the game that make me a little bit less optimistic against LSU, but we'll see. I was pleasantly surprised, I think, but there's some weaknesses that match up with LSU that aren't going to be in our favor. Anything else before we move into out of week 0 into some stuff that's going on this week with depth charts?
No, not really. Let's do. We definitely need to talk about the Auburn situation. You want to do that before or after the depth chart?
Yeah, let's talk about it. I saw the breaking news, which, I mean, obviously, I'm thinking when Harsin heard this news, he could not have been feeling great.
No, just what an uphill battle. They just don't do anything to make it easy on whoever's there.
So I don't know a ton about this story. Maybe other people don't either. So what happened? I saw that he basically was negotiating with Auburn to get out of the job, essentially.
Yeah. So I'm pulling it up on AL.com, which is where you go for news and journalism for sure. This happened on Friday, and what's interesting is the timing of it's very bizarre because you're about to start football season, which is your primary moneymaker. But also, if you're Auburn, you have the get out of jail free card of that whole everything school thing that their fans have really clung on to. Because, I mean, this is the guy that gave Bruce Pearl that huge contract. His decision to step down to pursue other interests comes 4.5 years into his initial 5-year contract with the university. He was hired in January 2018, which, again, this makes you understand this. Harsin was his hire. In quotes, because it was still something that there's not Auburn has found itself, and thank God for Texas, they have found themselves in this back and forth of which program is run less efficiently between the two, from their boosters. Just a very odd timing again. Their next AD will be their 16th all time. I don't know what that means in terms of how many. I know that Harsin is their 27th head coach. They've got a couple guys that are going to oversee, I guess, the hiring process, but it will also be a situation where now if you're Brian Harsin, you don't have you almost have to win 8 games at this point just to even him not having anyone there. He has no one outside of maybe the locker room that is going to go to bat for him. That part I kind of hated because it's the writing almost seems like it's on the wall. And what's crazy about this is Auburn has a really good chance of starting the season 5-0.
That's what I was going to say his start to this year is pivotal, and he gets Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, but it's at home. Missouri. So, and then LSU, which, we don't know what LSU is going to be right now, but, if he loses Penn State, LSU, and then they get smoked by Georgia, I think he gets fired midseason. Who's going to be the AD?
Well, see, I think that's another thing with the timing, that you're kind of giving yourself not the longest window or the biggest window to go find somebody.
Right. Because the early signing period now, you could if you wait till the end of the season to fire your coach,
Right.
You're firing him within 2 weeks of signing day. So you have
Yeah.
no chance. At 95% of the kids sign early signing period. So you have no chance of having a good first recruiting class, which is just, as we're seeing in the college in this new era with the transfer portal and moving the signing day up, it's really tough for these first year coaches to have any semblance of a recruiting class.
I will say, I think some Auburn fans would argue that is not the biggest concern, just with how Harsin has recruited in general.
Sure.
But I will say it's just, again, like it's kind of odd timing. It'll be interesting to see who they go with, because I think a lot of people just it's a foregone conclusion that Auburn will fire Harsin now, regardless of what happens during the season. Again, this will be fun to watch just in terms of, like, if Harsin somehow gets to 8 wins, 9 wins, and they knock off somebody, and again, they could definitely start 5-0. I think you're right more than anything. If they lose that Auburn LSU game's in Auburn, I think their first 5 games are in Auburn. So I guess like
if you lose 2 in that stretch and then you go to Georgia and get destroyed,
right, you're done.
You're done.
Right. I completely agree with that, because you still have the back half of that schedule is the toughest part. And so I think he would almost have to start off 5-1 for sure. Now, if he keeps his job and they go into late in the fall, right, that will be interesting to watch, just because then you start getting into basketball season, which is you start getting into some of these sports that are not your bread and butter, but going to make the university, like, you got to make Bruce Pearl happy. You almost kind of wonder if that's where they, like, if Harsin keeps his job that long, you wonder if a lot of the decisions that are made after that aren't about football as much as they would have been in the past. Does that make sense?
I guess, yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. It'll be interesting.
That back half of the schedule, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
So after that, if you can't get through, you have to go undefeated in that, because then you go to Athens, to Oxford, home against Arkansas, to Starkville, back home to A&M, quick break at Western Kentucky, and then to Tuscaloosa.
Okay, but hear me out here. If you go 5-1, right, going into Athens, it does, and you lose, whatever, the next 2 games, this is what I'm talking about, extending the whole situation. Because if he's 5-0 and loses to Georgia, what?
He's going to have to split those next 2.
They've beaten them the last 5 or 6 years in a row, both teams.
Yeah, Ole Miss and Oxford. I guess we don't really know what Ole Miss is going to be with the transfers. I mean, I think they're going to be pretty good, but there's a lot of people that are down on Ole Miss.
Yeah, and also Auburn, and we can transition into this, like, because it's depth chart day, like I said, but TJ Finley was named the starter, and that was not received well by a lot of people that covered the team.
Right.
And felt like that was a very not odd move, but just it wasn't something that give him a lot of confidence going into the year.
I could totally see the Auburn media kind of like turning on him and like starting to create conspiracy theories that he's intentionally sabotaging the program.
I don't think they'll do that. I think the boosters will, because we've already seen it. This calendar year, we've seen it. TJ Finley being the starter. We've been doing these Twitter spaces I've been telling you about, these Auburn After Dark spaces that are just incredible to listen to. Had J-Boy in one of them the other day. I had a lot of fun talking with him, because he's somebody that's close to that program. But the TJ Finley thing was kind of just surprising to hear. Like, Robbie Ashford's mom has been in almost every single one of these. She was in one that I did last night for I don't know what reason.
You hosted it and she showed up?
Yeah. Had a lot to say about.
Are you fighting with Robbie Ashford's mom?
No. I was first off, the only people I've been fighting with on Twitter. Well, I got into a fight with some Bama basketball gumps last night. That was weird. But other than that, it's just Georgia. Anyway, the other big news at the quarterback position, I was just saying it's kind of odd, because some people thought that her son might win that starting job, and you hear that Calzada might be the 3rd string, which is an odd move for sure. But his former school, Zach Calzada's, A&M named Haynes King the starter at QB.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if talking to our guest about A&M, I think that people wanted Haynes King to win the job because he does have a lot of athleticism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised that Max Johnson isn't the guy. And then Connor Wegman, I guess is his name, is supposed to be super talented, but I think he's a true freshman, if not redshirt. So I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Max gets some reps as well, and they kind of figure that out as the season progresses.
Oh, for sure. No one named Connor Wegman is going to win that starting job. No, but Haynes King, it'll be interesting to see what he looks like, because even if he only had a game and a half last year, he was not impressive even in that game against, I think it was like UTEP or somebody. But he is a legit athlete, and he doesn't look like it at all. He's kind of got those Pete Davidson eyes, which is not a compliment.
Yeah, the butthole eyes.
Yeah, they get the butthole eyes. I'm glad I had to say it. It's a weird darkness around the orbital socket.
Right.
But no, he's a very good athlete for sure. It'll be interesting to see. Like I thought Max Johnson all along would be the guy, because that fits more in line with what we've seen from Jimbo in the past.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. It's always been interesting about Jimbo. Even when he was at Florida State, before I was ever bitter about him, a lot of people said, if you look around we won 29 straight with Jameis as QB. But if we didn't have an elite QB, it was always a 2 to 3 loss season. Like there was always just some disappointing, because Jimbo's offense is a very difficult thing to execute. It puts a lot on the QBs, which is why a lot of times he has really smart QBs, which is why they go round one. But it's like an NFL offense. And I think it's a little bit, if you don't have the perfect QB that can execute and think quickly and all that, his offense just doesn't work. Like it doesn't hum. And so you got to hope Haynes King is that for them, or otherwise it's probably a 3-loss, 4-loss season again.
Well, and I don't think that would even be something you would pin on Haynes King, and we don't know if it's going to happen. It's because that's a very tough schedule they have to go through anyway. So, anyway, yeah, I love that Trevor Garza said the ghost of Auburn's past, present, and future for sure. And it's also kind of funny because you saw a couple of Florida fans say too, like, you know, how happy they were they didn't get Scott Frost. Just I'm going back to some of the week 0 stuff. The quarterback situation, I think that was one that people were definitely like most intrigued on. LSU, I don't think has been named.
No, yeah, he said he's not going to name it.
Okay.
Which I from everything we know, it's probably going to be Jaden Daniels, right? I mean,
I think so. Yeah, I think so. You'll probably see both guys play, but I think they will have packages for Jaden Daniels at the very least, right? I mean, just at the very least.
Yeah.
I'm trying to push this one back. So Georgia didn't release a depth chart, but Seth Emerson from one of the Georgia sites, he posted one. It's one of my favorite things I saw on the internet today, because it gets down to the tight end position. It's like all this chicken scratch, and it just says, "Holy mother, ... shit," because of how deep they are at tight end. Oregon also did not name a starting quarterback, which in response, Kirby said, "It's fine. I know who their quarterback's going to be," which I thought was great, for sure. So I'm trying to think. Ole Miss and LSU are really the only other ones that were waiting to hear back from, or not hear back from, but waiting to hear from at like the quarterback position. It's also a situation where I think, especially early on for Ole Miss, it's not going to really matter as much, because the storyline is going to be Zach Evans.
Yeah.
Bama did release theirs, which, I mean, I don't know if you saw any of it. I think that
they ended up going with the young kid,
Bryce Young.
Yeah,
they did. I was surprised they didn't bring in somebody else. Just to
Paul
kind of
Tyson.
throw off the scent for Utah State. Paul Tyson. So obviously Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be your starting running back. I guess the only surprise to me was you didn't have Tommy Brockmeyer, who was the number 1 or number 2 overall offensive tackle 2 cycles ago, like 5-star.
Yeah.
Like not a can't miss guy, but like somebody you kind of thought would have made the rotation by now, with how bad that offensive line was last year. Nowhere to be found. The other big surprise here was So Trayshawn Holden's a guy that kind of emerged in the last scrimmage. He's gonna be one of your starting 3 receivers. Kobe Prentice, who is a true freshman, is the other one that is landed one of the starting jobs over Christian Leary, former 5-star, and some some sites, and a couple other guys as well. So I thought that was somewhat interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what happens at receiver for Bama this year. I'd love to. I'm surprised Ja'Cory Brooks hasn't had more talk. I mean, I thought he was going to be. He looked pretty good last year.
He had a couple big games. I mean, he's going to play. I mean, he had one big game, really. I mean, he came up big against Auburn, and that was when they one of the times they needed him most, for sure. I will say, I think that what you will see from Bama this year is they will get a lot of extra guys reps early. Like, I don't think you'll see as much running out the clock, in the second half of some games, because they're going to get some of these guys some work in. But I also think that you're going to figure out who the guys are, like, and kind of like move from there, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, Ja'Cory Brooks, Tyler Harrell, the kid from Louisville, he's also not a starter. They're all going to get reps. But it'll be, you're right, it'll be interesting to see what happens from there, especially early on. Because honestly, week 2, I mean, you already got to put it on, like, put everything on display when you go play Texas.
Right. Speaking of that, saw this. Did you see this little?
Yeah, that was a minute ago, I thought.
Situation. Yeah, I know, but we never talked about it. Do you think that there's like truth to that rumor? Could you see that happening?
I don't think that the SID would have, at a school like Texas, I don't think he would have done that. Sarthak said, "Are you guys reading these comments?" We are. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, there were reports, right, that Quinn Ewers hadn't won the starting job, but I don't think that you were going to go into this season and not have Quinn Ewers be your starting quarterback, because he has the most upside. So if you're trying to figure out, like, from floor to ceiling, and you obviously, if you're Sark in year 2, you need to get close to the ceiling, that's the guy that's going to take you there. And they're kind of playing with house money early on, like with that Bama game. Like, nobody's expecting them to even be close in that game. Bama's the number 1 team in the country. You want to, but if you have a first-year starter that goes out there and throws a couple of picks against what's supposed to be a top 5 defense in the country, I mean, you're fine.
Fair. Yeah, so I guess we gotta make some like long-term season bets here. We gotta make some picks for who we think are gonna win different conferences, championship, all that, before the season really starts this week.
Real quick, Trevor Garza mentioned this. Did you see the Michigan quarterback situation?
No, I didn't.
They released a full-on graphic that said they were going to start one of the quarterbacks game 1 and the other one game 2, because of how hard they both worked.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's got Harbaugh written all over it.
Yeah.
That makes me feel really bad about one of my picks for the long season bets.
All right, you lead the way with that. We'll get to the winning and boozing stuff afterwards, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
And I want to hear from the audience here. Like, if you, whether it's like a GIF, because we had some good ones on Twitter, or it's a drink, or any comparison, like, to best describe your team or how you feel about your team going into this year, let us know in the comments, or let us know on Twitter as well.
All right. Let's just go conference by conference. Let's pick who you think is going to win the conference, and then any like best bets you have as far as like season win totals or whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Start with the Big Ten. I'm going to go, obviously, Ohio State over Wisconsin in the championship game. Best bets: Michigan over 9.5 regular season wins.
Okay.
After hearing the quarterback strategy, don't love that. That's a little cute for me. Go with the guy that did well last year. I think they could be almost potentially undefeated going into the Ohio State game. That could be a massive game at the Horseshoe.
Yeah.
And then I got Indiana under 4 regular season wins. I think the worst team in the Big Ten.
Okay.
So I will log those bets. What we're going to do is we're going to keep our season long. You've already had a couple with Hendon Hooker. and Bryce Young. We'll keep those on a separate tab, and then we'll do the weekly ones separate from that.
Okay.
All right. So those are mine from the Big Ten. What about you? Who do you got winning the Big Ten? Any bets from that conference?
Ohio State. I have them going undefeated, winning the Big Ten for sure. I don't really know who comes out of the West. I know some people are high on Wisconsin. I don't really give a shit who comes out of the West. It's not going to matter. They're the best team. I have seen a couple people that are high on Penn State, and they're like where they could end up being at the end of the year. But yeah, I've got Ohio State. I know it's like a very boring pick. I just think they return. I don't think their defense is going to be like top 10 nationally, like some of their fans think, just because they got Knowles from Oklahoma State. Right. If you look at his track record, it's not like Oklahoma State was a national powerhouse on defense year in and year out. He had a very, very good year last year.
Yeah.
But I think that being said, they will also be better than they were a year ago by a significant amount because of how, the bar was set pretty low. Then let's see. Outside of that, I think Maryland's total is like 6.5. I kind of like them at over that. I don't not enough to put a massive wager on it by any means, but I think with Tagovailoa, the younger one there, obviously, and then the receivers they have are, the starting receivers they have at Maryland, especially with Mike Locksley at head coach. You could put them up. I think not as good as Ohio State, but they might be the second best in the Big Ten and up there nationally with as a whole unit. So
they have recruited well there, surprisingly. Locksley is kind of that dude though on the trail. Okay, so let's go to the Big 12 then. I got Oklahoma winning the Big 12 over Baylor.
Okay.
I also like Oklahoma over the 9.5 regular season wins. I think as much as Lincoln Riley brought away from Oklahoma with him, he still did a very good job of recruiting there. And
True.
I can buy into the Dylan Gabriel, Jeff Lebby kind of connection that they had at UCF when he put up the huge numbers. And I can also buy into, this is Venables. Like, you're going to have a good defense. They're going to be improved defensively from last year. So I'll take Oklahoma over 9.5 regular season wins. Some people are saying Kansas State is might be a dark horse in Big 12. So I'll go over 6.5 regular season wins there. I'm going to take Texas under 8.5 wins.
Under 8.5.
I'm going to under 8.5. And then West Virginia under 5.5, simply because JT Daniels is a beta.
Oh, okay.
And I just don't. Him leading an offense, I don't know. It seems like he's kind of given up in every situation he's been in, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair.
They lost a ton off that roster as well. They have a hard schedule, but I just don't trust JT Daniels.
That's fair. I'm going to take so the Texas thing is interesting just because of how bad their preseason has been with injuries and a couple other things. I'm still going to pick them to win. I think like the Big 12, I think it's going to be them in Oklahoma at the end of the year in the Big 12 championship game. I don't understand. I think we're just kind of assuming that Oklahoma is going to be great. We don't know what kind of coach Venables is going to be. You've already had one situation where one of his assistant coaches was like openly dropping the N-word in the locker room and got relieved of his duties pretty quickly, rightfully so. They do have Dylan Gabriel, which I feel like is not talked about nearly enough at quarterback, and Jeff Lebby coming in to be the OC there, which I think will be a great combination. You still have Marvin Mims. So the offense will be great. I'm going to take Texas just because I think the potential there, especially with what they could put up there, like offensively with Sark, is just too good to pass up. But I will say the 8.5 is interesting because if you lose that game to Oklahoma, like you have done consistently, and you lose the game to Bama, which everyone assumes you're going to do, that puts you at 10, and there's not a lot of room for error after that. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to take the over on that. I don't really have a feel for anyone else. I think
Texas over 8.5.
What's that?
Going Texas over 8.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm still going to take them to win the Big 12 as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting. All right. ACC. I'll let you go first this time.
I hate to say it, but I'm going to take Clemson.
Yeah.
I would have a hard time with the way they've been the last decade. I hope that they're bad. I really do. I don't care how that sounds. I openly will pull against them in almost every single game. I have a hard time thinking that they'll be as bad as they were a season ago at the quarterback position. They did have a lot of injuries last year. The defense will still be good even without Venables, just because of the talent they've amassed there. I just think the rest of the conference is still so bad that I don't see how that they really do, like how they would fail. They could go 11-1, and if you have, the SEC, if you have a one-loss SEC champ, a one-loss Big Ten champ, you're still going to be the third. Like you're still going to be the third most automatic shoe-in for the playoff behind those two, in the Power Five. Over at even probably an undefeated Pac-12 team, over, unless it's Utah with it, because they would have wins over Florida and USC. I'm taking Clemson.
I think, obviously, when you compare the ACC to the SEC, it's not close. I think the ACC will be pretty improved this year, though. I actually think, between Miami, I think being significantly better, NC State, there's a lot of really good quarterbacks in the ACC this year. I think there's probably some sneaky games on their schedule. Hell, if we're a decent team, they come down to Tallahassee. If we're we have a pulse, that's not going to be an easy game for them. We played them close last year. But ultimately, I do think they will win the ACC because I think they will improve on offense. There's some people that think pretty highly of the guy that replaced Venables, actually. So they may not take that big of a step back. And their D-line talent is ridiculous. So I'll take them over Pitt. I think Pitt will be kind of a surprise pick in the Coastal, but I think Miami's probably 1 or 2 years away from really dominating that side. With that, I'm going to go Pitt over 8.5 regular season wins. They get nearly their whole defense back. They have an easy schedule. There's only 2 top 30 opponents, according to SP+. Keaton Slovis comes in and replaces Pickett. I know they lose Addison as well, but they've got actually some decent playmakers. So, like Pitt, Virginia under 7 regular season wins.
I can see that, yeah.
And BC under 6.5 wins.
I will say I'm going to stay away from Miami just because and see how Cristobal is. But I think that NC State over 8.5 is I think a very good pick. You get a lot of your tough games at home, and they also have UConn in their non-con. I would also take Syracuse over 4, which I know sounds kind of stupid, but I would take that because of the fact that you have one of the best running backs in the league, maybe one of the more underrated ones in the country. At UConn, I would assume is a win. Mm-hmm. Virginia, Wagner at home. You have, Louisville, I think, is probably a loss even though you're at home. You have Purdue. You have Florida State, no offense, both those games at home, and you're at Wake and at Boston College. I think they split. They go in 2-2 in those games at worst, and I think they would go over. But I would still take Clemson. I don't think Pitt's going to be nearly as good as people think.
You go Pitt under?
I wouldn't bet it either way, but I don't think they're going to be as good as people think.
Okay. Kevin King coming in and saying, I want Florida State to be good again. Love that. Okay. Pac-12. I'm going to go Utah over Oregon.
I like that.
We'll see. Maybe Bo Nix, getting away from his dad's shadow at Auburn, getting out of the SEC. Maybe he finds a new life at Oregon. He's got talent. But ultimately, I'll take Utah, a more established program. They're expected to be the winner. So not like I'm breaking down any walls by making that pick. But I'm going to take USC to disappoint. 9.5 regular season wins. I'm going to go under. Yeah. I just don't see it defensively with them. Obviously, they've added a lot of pieces offensively. And then Washington under 7.5. They had a mess of a program. The guy was fired quickly. I just think that quick of turnover, I've seen it in my own alma mater. Things are not typically good in that first year. Yeah. So to win 8 games, I think would be a stretch for them. So I'll go under 7.5 for Washington.
I will say, I want to give a shout out to one of our listeners from Twitter from earlier today who said, I'm trying to find his name on here. Hold on. It's this is good radio. Notorious BEARD He said, love listening to your pod, even though I'm out here in Washington. It's my favorite weekly listen. So shout out to him because I love that.
Sorry for picking under. My bad.
Yeah, that's kind of fucked up. I'm going to take Utah as well. I think they win the Pac-12 for sure. I love Whitting. I mean, like everyone assuming that Lincoln Riley is going to just continue what he had at Oklahoma is forgetting what was already in place at Oklahoma when he got there. He's a great offensive mind and a good coach for sure. That type of situation is not what he walked into at USC. He's done a good job with 2 players in the portal, but that's about it. So we'll see how far that can take them in the Pac-12.
I like the running back they got from Oregon too, Travis Dye, but
sure. I mean, I don't think
still doesn't help the defense.
Right, and Utah is a good team. We saw how good of a balanced team Utah could be, especially we just kind of assume with Whittingham like the defense is going to be legit. That's more of like a hard-nosed type team. Like they looked good on offense last year in that Rose Bowl game especially. So I'm going to take Utah. My dark horse would be UCLA because I think Chip Kelly in year 3 or whatever he's in with everyone he's got returning, he's just kind of flying under the radar, which I love. Oregon will be interesting just because they're going to get beat in week 1. It'll be interesting to see what Bo Nix looks like against Pac-12 defenses. And also they've got a lot of talent at linebacker and on that defense with a very good defensive mind with Dan Lanning coming year 1. I'm going to do something that's going to shock you. I'm taking Utah to beat Oregon State in the Pac-12.
Just for maximum devastation for that fan base.
I mean, I think that Oregon State's going to be like, as much as I hate Oregon State, I think they're going to be a lot better than people give them credit for, and they're just very much overshadowed. That's a team that they beat Oregon 2 years ago in the COVID year, and they went to a bowl game last year, lost to a good Utah State team. So that's my pick, but I still have Utah going the distance, I guess, in that conference.
All right. Any bets you're locking in on win totals in that conference? You said USC under 9.5.
I did not, but I just said I don't think they're gonna be as good as people think. I think I would take that because they play Utah and I'm pretty sure they have to play Oregon too, like back-to-back weeks with a bye week in between. I will take Utah. Aren't they only at 8.5?
I could tell you that. Hold on. Utah. Where are you at, Utah? Utah is 9.
I would take over on that.
All right.
And then what's Oregon State at? 6.5?
It is 6.5.
Yeah, I would take the over on that too. Now let's get to the good stuff.
Look at you.
It's called growth, man.
6.5. All right, to the mighty SEC. This is going to shock you, Chris. I mean, I think you can be disappointed in this pick. I'm going to take Bama over Georgia. I know. I had to go out on a limb and take Bama. Man, the top level talent on Bama this year, obviously, knock on wood, you keep all those guys intact. I think they're the better team this year. Georgia has by far the most talent in the East. So they should be able to win that side of the division, but ultimately losing 15 guys to the draft, I think is a little too much to overcome. I think they could slip up maybe in the regular season, but if not, then to Alabama. Still, if the only game they lose is in the SEC championship, I'm sure they'll be in the playoff. Maybe I picked that. I don't know. Hint. But I would take Bama over Georgia. I just took one bet here for the SEC because I figured you'd probably have a bunch. Arkansas over 7.5. I'm a big believer in what Pittman's doing.
Well, okay. That's good. I'm happy for you on that. I've got Georgia over Bama, and you guys can call it a hedge. You can call it whatever the fuck you want. I still say with that schedule and the talent they have coming back in Athens, I would be way more comfortable with Georgia running through that gauntlet than I would Bama. Bama's schedule. People will continue to give Bama shit for how bad their schedule is, and if you want to see some of the most overzealous shit talking, watch if Bama loses to Texas in week 2. That's the third road game apparently that Saban's scheduled, and I don't even know how long. Big Ten fans were all butthurt about that. But Georgia's schedule is very, very easy compared to a lot. It's the easiest schedule in the league. And that's not just because of how dominant they are going to be and how they were a year ago. I understand what they lost the draft. I understand they lost Lanning. Todd Monken is one of the best offensive coordinators in the country. I think this year, even if Stetson is not great, I think Stetson will have a shorter leash this year than he had last year. Because I think you're right. I think JT Daniels was a little bit of a beta and he was always injured. I think Georgia runs through the SEC undefeated. I think I will tell you right now, I would be willing to bet if there was a prop bet out there that Georgia wins 7 of their 8 conference games and maybe 10 plus in the regular season by a minimum double digits. I don't see anyone coming close to that team in the regular season. By the time they get to the SEC championship, you have enough time to where and depth where you've been able to develop all that kind of stuff throughout the season. I tell you what, man, and I don't want to put this out there. And Bama's, I'm going to pull for him harder than anyone else. And like, I hope that I'm wrong when I say this, but I just don't. I mean, you were so close to a year ago of losing 2, 3, 4 games in the regular season. They should have won that A&M game, and they still probably should have lost 4 other ones in the regular season. Is that changed this year? Maybe. I mean, probably. But I tell you what, you don't have is like for the first time since 2016, you don't have the luxury of losing your starting quarterback and still being okay the rest of the season. Jalen Milroe is a freak athlete, all that kind of stuff. If Bama's one Bryce Young injury away from being a 9-win team at best.
Your boy Clint Lamb disagrees.
Clint Lamb's a smarter person than me. So I love that.
Yeah.
But I will say, I think that like the schedule is very difficult. And, and maybe I'm still seeing a lot from last year's team, but I don't think the receiving core is going to be as good as it's been in the last 5 years. I mean, you're talking about like, I think you're finally going to have a drop off at several position units that not a significant, but you're going to have a pretty large drop off at several different positions that you haven't seen in the last half decade. That being said, you're also going to have in like teams, like the way you would build a team in the NFL, it's pass rush, quarterback play. And in that situation, they're by far, they're head and shoulders above everyone else in the country. So.
All right. So what are you taking here then? As far as bets,
I would bet Georgia to win it. I would hammer Georgia over 10.5 points or 10.5 wins. I think that's the easiest bet in the country just because the way their schedule is. Kirby's won a minimum 11 wins in 4 of the past 5 years. The only year he didn't was the COVID year. I also like Mississippi State over. I think they're at 6.5. What else do I like? I like Vandy over 2.5 at this point. I will throw that out there.
We did talk about that. I will give because I have it on my sheet already from a prior episode. We both talked about liking that, so I'll give it to you.
Yeah. But yeah, so I that's like Bama's. I think win total. It says here. I'm looking at Action Network that theirs is at 11.5, and it says that they have gone under that for 2 consecutive years. Which is the first time it's happened in the Saban era. I don't know how they would have gone under their win total in 2020 when they went undefeated and won the national championship. So it's got to be some sort of error. But I will also take Arkansas under 7.5 for sure. I would hammer that.
All right. I will. We'll keep those logs. We'll see who wins the season-long bets. As far as playoff is concerned. I think a lot of people, for being honest, probably have some of the same picks in there. You probably got Bama. You probably got Ohio State. Maybe you have Georgia. But I don't know. Let me ask you, because a couple weeks ago you had Texas in that 4 spot.
Yeah, that's not going to be the same.
Okay. Who's your 1 seed? Take it back. No, I think probably the most intrigue would be around the 4 seed. So who's your 1 seed?
So I think Georgia would end up being the 1 seed if they went undefeated and won the SEC championship. But it would be 1A, 1B with them and Ohio State.
Okay. I got Bama for the 1 seed, Ohio State the 2 seed.
Okay.
I'm guessing 3 would be Bama then.
No. I don't have Bama making the playoff.
No, come on.
I don't.
You don't have Bama making the playoff.
I don't understand why everyone assumes that this offense is going to be anywhere close to where it was a year ago. I understand Bryce Young's great. They should have a better offensive line. That schedule last year was much easier than it is this year. Is Bill? Think about
okay. So let me put it this way: Bryce Young, you got to expect would at least be somewhat better than he was last year.
Why?
Because he's a year older, another year in the system,
and he lost 2 incredible receivers, including 1 first rounder. That you don't have a single player on this team to start the year that does what he does physically. They don't run a 4-2. They don't have like the size.
I agree that aspect of Jameson Williams, you probably don't have that, but I think you're upgraded at running back. I think your O-line is probably going to be better. And let's be honest, it's not like you have guys that just can't play at wide receiver.
For sure.
We don't know what's going to evolve there. You've still got Latu at tight end.
Not to start the year, but yeah. But if we don't know what we have there, my thing is, why are we assuming? Because think about how fortunate Bama has been at the receiver position since 2017, mainly to 2018.
Did anyone see Jameson Williams being Jameson Williams?
No, is he back?
I don't think you heard me.
Jameson
Williams before he became Jameson Williams.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
when he transferred in, was anyone expecting him to be what he became?
No, I'm sure they weren't.
So I mean, between the guys you have on the roster, there's some good news on Trayshawn Holden. Apparently, Jermaine Burton transferring in, Louisville kid Harrell. Can one of them emerge and be that guy? I mean, I wouldn't rule it out.
You've had
lucky at wide receiver. Maybe they just develop really good wide receivers.
Maybe Bill O'Brien is a fucking soothsayer on offense all of a sudden, and that entire narrative of him not being a great OC changes. Or maybe for once again, you had a generational type quarterback for like the 3rd straight year of turnover, right? With Bryce Young, and Bryce Young could be great. In the you're right. Like, I don't think that you are necessarily better at running back.
I think you are, but
lose three running backs to season-ending injuries.
By the way, T's and P's to Brian Robinson. By the way,
yeah, that's tough, man. That was tough. I love that. I love that. See, this is why I love Georgia fans, because like Willie Gray, who I love to death, says, I'm sandbagging y'all. I'm also, you get the best defensive player and the best offensive player. You had that last year. How did that look when you lost 5 starters by the end of the season? I mean, like Jermaine Burton came off a national championship winning team. He wasn't even a top 3 target by season's end. Was never going to be either. And not just because of the way they dispersed the football, but like, he wasn't going to be over Brock Bowers. He wasn't going to be over George Pickens. Who am I missing? Jermaine Burton couldn't separate himself in a much weaker receiving room and unit in Athens. Why would all of a sudden why do I think he's going to be like some alpha at 6 feet, 190 pounds in the SEC? I mean, I hope I'm wrong about everything I'm saying, and I probably am, but
fair point. Yeah. So who do you have then? I've got who's in your 3 and 4 spot.
3 and 4 spot. Clemson 3. I think they go undefeated. And I think and I have Utah at 4.
Okay. Well, I've got Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan. I think very similar to what Bama, Georgia could be at the end of the year. I think that Michigan, Ohio State could be 2 undefeated teams. Maybe one of them, the other gets in still, whoever loses. I do ultimately have Bama over Ohio State in the Natty.
I got Ohio State over Georgia.
And I've got CJ Stroud. Now, would I bet CJ Stroud to win the Heisman? No, because he has the best odds, so it's not really great. Do I think he'll probably win given the kind of offense that they should have? Yeah. I do, but I'd rather bet on like a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Travion Henderson
Yeah.
versus Stroud, just with the odds. But I think
Okay.
Stroud will win the Heisman.
I have Utah, Clemson, Georgia, and Ohio State. I have 3 of those teams going undefeated, and because here's the other thing too. Bama goes 11-1. That's still a very good year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we all of a sudden think that that they're going to waltz in and beat Georgia in the SEC championship, especially after we see Georgia go. They will most likely be undefeated going into the postseason. If Bama can't afford to lose 2 games and get to the playoff. You can call me crazy all you want about them not winning the SEC or whatever, or Sam hedging, but it's a much better bet to think that they would lose 2 games than they would go undefeated, especially just from a historical standpoint.
All right. So there you have it. I've got Bama winning. Chris has Ohio State winning.
God, I mean, you're smarter than I am, so I hope you're right.
All right, let's get into our last segment. We've had a few comments in the chat tonight. We had a few people weigh in on Twitter. Chris has his own picks. It's a little bit of a classic segment that we like to call winning and boozing.
Mm-hmm. We'll do half of it now because I know that I've got a couple. I don't know. I just don't know how to engage with Georgia fans anymore. I just don't. I try to build them up. And I mean, it's a very Jekyll and Hyde situation. It's probably my own fault. All right. So we'll do half of these now. We'll do a couple more maybe later. We had some really good ones also sent to us on Instagram. I'm sorry, on Twitter. Because I said, send us what your mood for your team or your mood going into the season would be via GIF or GIF, however you want to say it. And or send us your drink of what your team would be as an alcoholic beverage. You want to do one for Florida State? Do you have one?
I didn't think of one, but let's get into some, and then I'll come up with one before we're done.
All right, I'll give you the ones I got from the intranet first. That let's see, Lillian, who's a Georgia fan, said W is for whiskey, and I need a shot. Okay. Couple of Kirby gifs of him kissing a trophy. We have one from my boy Griff, who's a Bama fan, said old fashioned. Almost everyone can make it, and you know what you're getting, so there's no surprises. He's a Bama guy. Graham Coffey said UGA is in a gap year where they have a legitimate shot to win another title and return 9 more players with PFF grades of 70 plus the national championship favorites Alabama, who they beat in their last meeting. We're drinking vacation drinks out of coconuts because there's no pressure. That is more asinine than anything I've said on this pod today. If you think there's no pressure from fucking Georgia fans after last year and what they've expected from Kirby, I will say that's kind of crazy, even though I love him. Old fashioned, everyone. Wait, hold on. This is the same person, I guess. Somebody said this is an Auburn one, which I thought was pretty good. They said, I would say tequila, margaritas if things go well, shots if they don't.
Love that.
I thought that was good. And the last one I'll say is my boy Taylor Long said Rumplemints. All my friends hate it, aka Georgia, and I love how much they hate it. So Rumplemints. I've got a couple as well. We'll start with Bama. I said Coors Lights or banquets. Okay, and specifically between 18 and 33 of them. Some of you will get that reference. Revenge is a dish best served cold. Wait till the mountains are blue, and then hopefully get the banquets ready. That's Bama's. The good ones here, I gotta say, for UGA, I had Weller Foolproof.
Okay.
Weller, I haven't heard anything from Weller over the past 40 years until this past year at all. Also, despite UGA's fan base on Twitter, especially showing how mentally unwell they've handled success, I'm still going to take Weller because from everything I've heard, it's really, really good. I said the Foolproof specifically because if they win it or even play for it again this year, now you have, for Kirby at least, you have proof instead of anything being a fluke. So there's that.
Love that.
Yeah, there you go. Arkansas, vodka cran, right? So, but the reason why is like vodka cran to start, and then you also are going to alternate with Bloody Marys, like specifically because the garnishes, right? A lot of Bloody Marys will put like a piece of bacon on there, which they're pigs, so it kind of makes sense from that standpoint. Also, the vodka cran, the coloring, kind of crimson or maroon or whatever color they want to lay claim to, but it's specifically on the first day of a 5 to 7 day trip in Vegas. Anyone that's ever been to Vegas knows that's a fucking 2 to 3 day town, like at most.
Yeah.
5 to 7 days is so over.
I love when like at this point being in my mid to late 30s, I don't run into a lot of people that have never been to Vegas.
Right.
But when I hear someone saying, "Oh, I'm going to Vegas for the first time," and they're like, "Yeah, we'll be out there for 7 days, 8 nights, or whatever," you're just like, "Oh, what a waste of money!
It's terrible.
What a waste of money! 5 of those days is."
Without a doubt. And so like the 5 to 7 day trip, that is something I feel like you're right. Like that's like something a novice would do. In Arkansas, whether they want to admit it or not, they're not used to this whole winning thing. Okay. I mean, getting to 9 wins last year for the second time in a decade, those are bookended in that decade. I mean, you're talking about the 9 wins from like 2012 and then 2021. Again, if their numbers at 7.5, they've lost 8 games in a season 5 times in the last 10 years. They've won 8 games or more just twice. Going to Vegas for 5 to 7 days is almost as crazy and over the top as their entire schedule is. And I just don't see that ending well for anybody. So Florida is going to be, some people are going to be uncomfortable with me saying this, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to say a Long Island iced tea. Okay. Specifically on an all-black bachelor party. And here's why. I talked to a good buddy of mine today, D'Amico Archangel, and we haven't spoken in a long time. We were catching up. I forgot about this mini in-town bachelor party he had where this is all we drank the whole time. And have you ever been to like an all-black bachelor party?
No, can't say.
Listen, I know my haircut and I understand just my dance moves, like in general. I was terrified. It was the most fun I've ever had. It could have gone 2 ways. Okay. Could have gone like one of 2 ways, awful or awesome. It went awesome. I kind of think that's how Florida's going to be. However, you are leaving a lot to chance by drinking a fucking Long Island iced tea. This is all we drank for 3 straight days. It turns out, like, if you put enough sour and Coke into it, the hangover's not as bad, but my God, some places do not know how to make that, and they will just fill it up to the brim with all 4 of like the liquor bottles at once. Not for me. That could be what happens with Billy Napier in year 1. I'm just saying. That's
okay.
Anyway.
I like that.
Yeah. And last but not least, Auburn. This could have gone one of 2 ways, and I actually wrote out 2 of these. Auburn, it's vodka, but it's shots of vodka. Okay. Specifically, Woody Creek potato-based vodka. Potato-based because Harson's from Boise. Woody Creek because the big yellow fella, Jimmy Rain, who is trying everything he can to run this program into the ground, is a lumberman, the only billionaire in the state of Alabama. And lastly, even more specifically, you're going to be drinking this only in shot form at a wedding that you plan on proposing at. Hear me out. Okay. Everyone else around you is probably drinking something similar, right? They seem to be drinking probably the same amount, and they're probably drinking the same drink. A little vodka, soda, splash cran. It's still hot outside. It makes sense. The only difference, they're enjoying themselves and not drowning their very, very suppressed sorrows that Auburn fans have been doing all offseason with Harsin as the head coach and pretending everything is okay. Like I said, Woody Creek because the yellow fella loves wood, and a wedding because unlike most normal schools, the over-the-top showing of love that Auburn has done for their head coach this offseason, it's very obvious to everyone around you that it is not something that even like is going to last. And anyone that proposes at a wedding or an engagement party or a gender reveal, anyone that does that specific deed at one of someone else's big day, very obvious that is something that is not going to last. And that's exactly what's happening in Auburn. So there you go.
Fair. All right. I like those picks. I came up with mine for Florida State.
Go ahead.
Florida State's an overly spicy margarita. When you make that decision, you go out to the bar, you make that decision that you're going tequila.
Yeah.
You're kind of going into it saying, fuck it, it's going to be a night. We're just going to go in this thing and we're going to get after it, And that's kind of the way I'm entering into this Florida State season. It's like, fuck it, they're going to be good or they're going to be bad, and we'll have a new head coach. Maybe we'll get Dion and we'll just put the thing in the toilet. But with a spicy margarita, sometimes they can be a little bit too much to begin with. And I think that's what this season is going to be like. When we're going to play LSU, I don't feel good about that game. No. And then everyone's going to be like, you know what? It's going to be the same Florida State. Congratulations, you beat any FCS school. But then I think once you get a little bit past the spiciness and maybe you lose that LSU game, maybe you refine yourself. Maybe you're like, oh, you know what? This does feel good.
Like that.
Then you have another spicy margarita halfway through the season. You get into playing NC State and Clemson back to back. Not great. Don't love this. But then, hey, get a few wins against Georgia Tech and Syracuse. We're feeling good again. And then it's Florida. Then it's just going to be one of those seasons that, by the end, you just end up hammered either way.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair for sure. I like that. I do want to say there's a couple in here we need to read just for sure. Like Trevor Garza put Bloody Mary. Complicated drink like A&M's offense. It's either going to hit the spot or make me want to throw up. I'll tell you right now, that's a perfect drink because I hate Bloody Marys and I will throw up every time I see Jimbo Fisher and A&M. Let's see here. There is somebody brought this up. I'll ask you. I'll defer to you first. Who would be Four Loko?
Well, I mean, the obvious choice right now is Nebraska. That's
not bad.
But let's see, who's Four Loko needs to be mentioned.
Texas is the answer.
Oh, that's Billy. Texas is a great Four Loko candidate.
Yeah.
I think USC could be a Four Loko candidate.
I was going to say that could also be one. The only difference is those, like, USC had a little, like, that's like assuming that, like, Four Loko came from any sort of, like that'd be like if Four Loko was somehow derived from, like, I don't know, Grey Goose or like a bottle of Cab.
I like the Tennessee pick. It's like this could either be really fun and crazy and wild offense, or it could be a disaster.
Like that.
Like that. Yeah, it's good. Good question, Billy.
South Carolina, real quick. I'll throw this out there. Bud Light Platinum.
What is that?
I mean, so like Bud Light is like a staple. Everyone's ventured into Bud Light. You've probably also ventured into Bud Heavies, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you had a couple of years where you were in great shape and you're like, I can afford to drink a Bud Heavy, just like South Carolina had like those 3 years of 11 wins or more. Bud Light Platinum was marketed as like the next big thing, and it was fucking terrible. And I'm not saying that South Carolina is going to be terrible, but I am saying that it's going to be very overrated in comparison to some of the other staples that we've seen in the past.
All right. I like that.
There you go.
All right. Well, let's get out of here, Chris. This week, I'm so excited for the next episode. You guys got to tune in. We'll be making our official picks for week 1. A lot of big matchups. Where do you start? I guess a lot of people would start at Oregon, Georgia, but you've got Florida State, LSU. You've got Ohio State, Notre Dame. There's a lot going on. You got Utah, Florida. Some big matchups coming up this week. So we're going to be picking the games. And sorry, I got distracted in the comments there.
You're good.
Anything else before we sign off here?
That's it, man. We appreciate you guys helping us get to the off season. It's been a lot of fun. It's only going to get better as we get into the season. So we will talk to you then.
All right, guys. For Chris, I'm Tyler. We will see you guys later this week.